Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I'm your host, John Strazicich, and today we'll be continuing on in the book of Hebrews in the 11th chapter, and we'll be looking at Moses and the Exodus generation today. So if you got your Bibles, go ahead and open them up to Hebrews chapter 11. Okay, now coming to this particular slide, we will give a translation of our text here, and then we will offer a structural analysis. And beginning here in Hebrews 11:23, we begin with our reoccurring phrase or anaphoric phrase, piste here. By faith, Moses, when born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw the child was handsome, and they did not fear the edict of the king. By faith, Moses, when he grew up, he denied to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer harm with the people of God than to have the temporary enjoyment of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he looked away to the reward. By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing the one who was invisible. By faith, he did the Passover and the sprinkling of blood in order that the destroyer might not touch their firstborn. By faith, they went through the Red Sea as through dry land, which the Egyptians attempting were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell, being surrounded 7 days. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish together with those who were disobedient, receiving the spies with peace. Okay, so what I did here, that's our translation, and it's just a run-through translation. However good that was, it is what it is. What I've done here is I have basically taken this text and I have broken it down into 3 portions here. And one is the report of the faith of Moses' parents at his birth, and then the majority of the text takes up, the selected acts of the faith of Moses here, and that's going to take up verses 24 to 29, and then we have the later acts of faith, in the fall of Jericho after the death of Moses, and this is narrated here in verses 30 to 31. And it's pretty, I guess it's pretty easy to break the text down like that. That's one way to do it. So conceptually, I just looked at it, the faith of Moses' parents, then Moses' faith, and then the Joshua generation here, their acts of faith in the events surrounding the fall of Jericho with the walls itself, and then it mentions Rahab the harlot here. So that makes up our text. Okay, and now coming here to this particular slide, we will look diagrammatically here at verse 23, and I'll go ahead and then I'll read through the sentence, and then we'll make some observations. By faith, when Moses was born, he was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw the child was handsome or beautiful, and they did not fear the edict of the king. So we can see here that we have here this is our base clause here, and then down here we have a causal clause here, dihati here, giving us a basis for the statement here that's made in 23a here, that by faith, when Moses was born, he was hidden 3 months by his parents. And then it tells us why, because they saw the child to be, you could say, beautiful, handsome, striking. There was some element of baby Moses that was peculiar in some sense that made him extraordinary. And that's defined by this particular adjective ostion here. And this is this is what we would call here an object complement. And it's and we have a compound sentence in this causal clause here, and which states, so number one, they saw the child was striking, and number two, they did not fear the edict of the king. Because you remember at the time in Exodus 2, where this story is our author is drawing from, that a new king rose over Egypt, and he made an edict that all children, male children, were to be killed at birth or thrown into the river. So this is picking up on that. So this particular slide is telling us about the faith of Moses's parents, that they refused to kill baby Moses, and they tell us 2 reasons why here: that there was some striking appearance of the child, and that they did not fear the edict of the king. And somewhat like the midwives, it's just really hard to kill your own son. So, of course, they acted in faith, in determining that they would defy the king's edict to save the life of their son. And in so doing, he ended up in the palace of Egypt, and he became the savior of the people. So through their heroic act of faith, they paved the way for Moses to become the great deliverer. So you never really know what your act of faith is going to, produce in the future, in what happens in the course of life. Now, coming here, we when it says we're going to talk here about Moses, and then that he was taken up by Pharaoh's daughter, and so this particular woman is known from history. Her name is Hatshepsut, and you can see here that she, Moses was born in 1526 here. And the Exodus is basically somewhere about 1446 here, BC. And that's where the Exodus would take place. And then the Pharaoh of the Exodus would be Amenhotep II. And that's according to just following the chronology that's found in the book of Judges, as well as in 1 Kings chapter 6. And I'm going to follow that chronology, and then these would and so Hatshepsut works really good as being the Pharaoh's daughter. Okay, now coming here to these verses here, we'll look here at verses 24 to 26. And the sentence here begins, of course, here with this anaphoric use of piste. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer harm with the people of God than to have the temporary enjoyment of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for He was looking off to the reward. Okay, so looking here, we've got a bunch of uses of some adverbial participles, and we'll look at this. So when it begins here, the first one, genomenos megos here. This here is a construction here, is an adverbial participle, and it's basically it's coming off from Exegesis 2:11, I believe, something like this, where the same phrase occurs there, but it's in reverse. It's megas, genomenos there. So this adverbial use is he's just picking it up from his memory from the Exodus story as it's related here in Exodus chapter 2. So when Moses becomes older, he refuses to be called the son of Pharaoh. So legestai here is the passive voice here, and it's a complementary infinitive introducing indirect discourse, which follows here, and so he's refusing to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, or of the son of Hatshepsut, as we saw in the slide before. So Moses had a choice to make, and so he decided that he knew that he was a Hebrew, and that he was although he was living in the Pharaoh's palace here as part of the royal family, but Moses knew his place in life, and so when he and we know from Acts 7 this is about his age of 40. So Moses is the first 40 years of his life he lived in the palace here in Egypt, and then when he turned 40, he basically he identifies with the Hebrews, and this is going to mark his transition where he flees to Midian for 40 years, and then the last 40 years of his life, from age 80 to 120, he comes back to Egypt to take the children of Israel out of Egypt, and then brings them all the way to the Promised Land. And so his life there ends on Mount Nebo there in the plains of Moab, just on opposite Jericho. And anyhow, so this is a little bit of understanding of how when we approach the text, how to understand all of the historical background to this. And then Moses here, he chooses. So we look at the next adverbial participle here. He's choosing rather here to suffer harm. And this is another middle present middle infinitive here, to suffer harm. This is what's from sukaku ke'amai. And then it's also, and it's being used complementary here, as well as ekane here with helomenos here, that which is hyreo here. This is just the aorist middle form here, helomenos. Choosing rather to suffer harm with the people of God. So he had to make this big choice. So he could have cruised, with this, than to have the temporary enjoyment of sin. Okay, so that basically meant the temporary here means a lifelong life of luxury within the palace. So Moses sees that no, I got to look forward. I'm a Hebrew, and I got to look forward to the reward of God, knowing that the Egyptians are idol worshippers. They worship Ra, the sun god, and that this is a form of polytheism. And so he rejected this life, and now he identifies, and so this is picked up by another adverbial participle here, where it says hege somenos here, considering the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. For, and this is the causal clause, because he was looking forward or looking away to the reward. And so Moses had a choice to make, like we all do in life, and this determined everything that he was to do. He had this one huge, massive choice. What am I going to do? Kick back and enjoy the life of pleasure in Egypt, or am I going to then look ahead to the really great reward of eternity? And so Moses made the right choice, and then he chose to suffer with the people of God and to participate in the suffering of Christ. And so this choosing the reproach of Christ, or considering the reproach of Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. So that's how Moses perceived this. He saw that, hey, this other one's temporary, but and it's just going to occur in this life. But looking forward to eternity, I would much rather have eternity in heaven than to go to hell and suffer there for eternity in exchange for the temporary enjoyment of sin in this life. And so some scholars here have looked here. This here is a portion here of Psalm 89 in the Septuagint text, where it reads, "Where are your mercies of old, O Lord, which you swore to David in your truth? Remember, O Lord, the reproach of your servants, of which I have borne in my bosom from many nations, of which the enemy has reproached you, O Lord, of which in exchange they reproached your anointed, or your Christ." And that would be referring to the Davidic monarch here. And so the use here of anaidizo here in its verbal form here with tu Christu, scholars are saying that this is maybe an echo here of Psalm 89 that our author picks up here, where he is considering the reproach of Christ, okay, to Christu here, right? And this would be, your anointed here in the text. And that's what Christ means. It means the anointed ones, the Messiah, Mashiach, okay? And so this here would have obviously Moses didn't know, the name Christ here, but he would have known that the one who was coming, that he prophesied of, would be called the Anointed One. So in that fact, but when we say Christ, we think of it as differently than what the biblical authors thought of it. When they heard the term Christ, they thought of Messiah, or the Anointed One. We don't think of that now, because it's been, church history has just turned that around so that we don't really know what biblical words mean. We just somehow thought that this was his last name. I'm just saying it in popular culture. So this here, it may have, according to Lane here, he's surmising this along with a lot of other authors. So this may be an intertextual echo here, stemming here from Psalm 89. But whatever's going on here, he's considering the reproaches of Christ as greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. So we can see here that the author is accommodating this language, most likely on behalf of his audience, because that's what's happening to them. They are suffering reproaches on behalf of Christ, because the synagogue has thrown them out, and they are now the menim, or the heretics, considered by the Jews now at this time, in the latter half of the first century, and so this is, so our author here scoring some points here with in narrating Moses's thoughts here with and accommodating it to the situation in which the readers are at, and so then they can easily see this as that they have lost their goods and some of their homes and property. We've already seen that in chapter 10, and on account of Christ. And now he says here, because, or for here, Moses was looking ahead. So this is the imperfect use. So he was continually looking forward to the reward. So he had this before him, that it was a lifelong pursuit, that this is what faith does, is it looks forward to the real reward, so that we can cash in on eternity, rather than looking here, enjoying the temporary enjoyments of sin here temporally. So we definitely are going to choose, along with Moses, a life of faith. Okay, now coming here to verse 27, we'll pick up in our discussion here, and we'll pick up with the anaphoric use here of piste. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, oh boy, we got to make sure this is epsilon, for he endured as though seeing the one who was invisible. Okay, so this verse here nicely, splits in half. This is a causal cause here for the faith statement made here in verse 27a. So Moses leaves Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, and then this is the basis clause telling us why he didn't fear the wrath of the king, and it says, for he endured as though seeing the one who is invisible. So this underlines the causal clause previously underscores it, that he was looking forward to the reward. And so the one who is invisible here is a circumlocution for God. It's just a roundabout way of referring to God through the use of other words. And anyhow, so this is another act of faith that our author has chosen here to depict Moses, and that. And it's it's decisions that we make based upon fear. So are we going to cower to fear, or are we going to then act in faith and choose the road less traveled, and trek out on a life of faith? And this is what Moses has chosen to do, and this is our life. We're no different from them. We're all going to have fears in our life that are going to confront us, and we have to choose what we are going to do. in these moments of fear. And so we have to remember that we're acting in faith, looking forward to what is right. And so, but we have some concerns here when we remember the story here as it's told in Exodus 2, and we'll look here at the text. Vayomer mi samcha leisar v'shofet aleinu, and he said, "Who has made you a captain and judge over us? Are you really saying to kill me just as you killed the Egyptian?" Vayira Moshe, and Moses was afraid. So this is a key phrase here. And Moses was afraid. Vayomer, and he said, "Surely the matter is known." And Pharaoh heard this matter and sought to kill Moses. And then it says here that Moses fled before Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he dwelt at the well. Okay, and so this is the Septuagint down here, where it says, "And Moses became afraid, and he said, surely this matter has become known. And Pharaoh heard this word, and he was seeking to kill Moses. And Moses departed from the presence of Pharaoh, and he dwelt in the land of Midian. And coming to land of Midian, he sat at the well." Okay, so this here is just the Septuagint's translation here, but you can see here epha bethe here, and we can see that this use here of its adverbial use here, is reflecting this. But it says here that Moses did not fear the wrath of the king. But it says here Moses became afraid. So people have wondered about this. So I would just say, it's just, of course you're going to become afraid. I think the Hebrew text here says that he became afraid. Well, of course that's what's going to happen to everybody. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen to you, people of faith, as well. But it's, okay, so what do you do now with this fear? So then obviously what happened was that Moses then began to reverse this, and he began to then act in the life of faith. And this is why he endured as seeing the one who is invisible. Okay, now coming here to verse 28, we are going to look at what we got going on here. So we have our baseline here with our main verb, petpoi aken, and this is a perfect participle. And by faith, we'll start off here with our leading word here, piste. By faith, he made the Passover and the sprinkling of blood in order that, so we have a purpose clause here, in order that the one who destroyed the firstborn might not touch them. So this is basically a statement with a purpose clause, and so by faith Moses believed when God spoke to him about the instructions for Passover, and we can see that those were given in chapter 12 of Exodus, and they were told to then put the blood upon the lintel and upon the doorposts, so that when the destroyer came at in night, that he would pass over the house. Hence we have Passover, and that the firstborn would not be killed. And if someone did not apply the blood of the Passover lamb upon their door, then the firstborn died of all of their animals and of all humans. So this was a very grievous thing here. And so by faith Moses did this and escaped the punishment here of the destroying angel that God sent forth to destroy the disobedient Egyptians. And then it says, by faith, here in verse 29, they went through the Red Sea. They didn't go through the Sea of Reeds. They went through the Red Sea, as through dry ground here. The Egyptians having made an attempt, they were drowned. So anyhow, so this depicts the crossing of the Red Sea, and there's a lot of discussion about exactly what branch of the Red Sea that this particular event took place at, and I know there's very good ones for the easterly branch of the Red Sea, but we just don't know. I don't know about the evidence for that, but anyhow, it may have been on the eastern side, I don't know. But we do know that Mount Sinai is in Arabia. So, St. Catherine's Monastery is not where Mount Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula. That's for sure. We know that. We know this from Galatians. Paul told us that. And that's where Midian is located, is in Arabia. So that's important. But the crossing of it's not the Sea of Reeds, it's the Red Sea, and we all know the story here that by faith they did this, and the Egyptians, when they attempted, were drowned. And you can see here that the crossing of the Red Sea would have been somewhere either here or over here. And definitely, we're not talking of that they went through some Sea of Reeds, because then I guess the miracle's even bigger, because the Egyptians drowned in a foot or two of lake water here in these swamps. So this is all ridiculous here. It's talking about the literal Red Sea here, and the Red Sea, it composes of these two branches, and it goes out to the Indian Ocean. So they either cross somewhere right about here or somewhere over here. We don't know exactly where it was. The place names have escaped our historical notice. But by faith they did this, and the Egyptians were drowned in a mighty crushing blow of the Red Sea here. And this is something that, this is definitely not Mount Sinai down here. Mount Sinai is somewhere over in here. Midian is this area over in here. So this is where Mount Sinai is. Okay, now coming here to verse 30 and 31 here. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell, having been surrounded 7 days. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish with those who were disobedient, receiving the spies with peace. So we have these basically a pair here of temporal participles here that are adverbial in origin, and then we also have this substantive down here, this adjectival substantive participle here from apatho here, which it means to be disobedient. Anyhow, so this comprises, the walls fell, and it took faith for the Israelites to obey the instructions of something that didn't sound to be logical, but they did, and the walls fell, and they plundered then, and they didn't plunder, they destroyed and put the whole city under ban. Only Achan took from the spoils, and he died. And then we have Rahab the harlot, our famous harlot in the Bible, and who became God-fearing believer in Yahweh. And truly, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first here. So this chick finally got it right, and she was smart, and she received the spies with peace, and sent them out another way, and negotiated, that her life would be saved and her family. So this is a very famous woman in the Bible. Paul mentions her, James, the brother of the Lord, mentions her, and she's also in the lineage of Christ's family line here. This comprises our unit for the day, and hopefully this has been a decent presentation here on the life of faith of Moses and the Exodus generation. And this is biblical theology, exegesis, and hermeneutics, where meaning is always context driven. Please like, share, and subscribe.